Welcome back to another Reddit video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. People who've attended a ruined wedding. What happened? Not really ruining the wedding, but it certainly stopped the vibe leading up to the wedding. I asked my brother to be my best man at my wedding. Brother and I, Catholic, GF, Episcopal. He says yes. Months after saying yes, he comes to us and tells us that he can't be the best man or even be at the ceremony because his priest tells him it will be a mortal sin for him to be a witness to the ceremony because I'm not asking for dispensation and getting married in an Episcopal church. Okay, understood, Sat, but if that's the way you see it, we'll deal with it. At this point I ask my best friend to be my best man and all is good. Or so we thought. A couple months before the wedding, my brother starts a campaign calling my entire family and telling them they will be committing a mortal sin if they attend my wedding and explaining how my children will be bastards in the eyes of God and anyone who even sleeps under the same roof as us will be committing sin. WTF. I find all this out through cousins and friends and am in complete shock. Luckily I have a few cool family and they all show up for the wedding. Everyone had a "what the hell is wrong with your brother?" question on the day of the wedding, but it was a great time with an open bar and live band. Here's the kicker of it all. My mom is Catholic, my pop is Episcopal, no divorces or any unhappiness, just your normal suburban family. My father-in-law repeatedly used my husband's ex-GF's name during his speeches, and when talking to me, his toast at the wedding was full of slurred speech and a story about Mark and Alyssa and their budding romance, and how adorable it was. I'm not Alyssa. Alyssa was his GF in high school. His parents got divorced when he was young. He was a severely abusive alcoholic, and I've met him twice outside of our wedding. He didn't see much of my husband after he was 12 years old, very out of touch. That said, we had been dating 6 to 7 years before we got married. He should at least get my name right. How about the wedding being ruined by itself? I was dating a girl whose cousin was getting married. Cousin was an obese goth chick getting married to a dude even bigger than her. We show up on the day of the wedding. I 100% promise this is serious. They've secretly decided it would be a Jagala wedding. Both bride and groom are in Jagalo Macup, and the priest's speech thing included "thank God for the insane clown posse" and "thank God for Craigslist where they met," I guess. It was weird. Finally a thread I can comment on. I recently had my wedding, and we woke up together happy to be getting married. Then my soon-to-be husband received a text from his mother. Disclaimer, his mother had waist-length black hair. It's a photo of her. She cut and colored her hair exactly like mine. Shoulder length, brown with blonde streaks. I was livid. Of all days to color your hair, and to do it on my wedding day. Fine, I'll let it go, and decided to just forget it. Finally it's the moment we all have been waiting for. I'm walking to the aisle, and we reach the front. The parents were called up, so we all could recite a vow together. Our wedding was held in front of a riverbank, mind you. His mother then proceeded to walk around me near the pastor, instead of being with the other parents near the groom. She proceeded to loudly scream and fall. As she fell she grabbed my hair and I fell with her inches away from the riverbank. My moment. Ruined. She got up and laughed and walked away while I was on the ground trying not to cry. To be honest, I don't remember anything else from the ceremony. I was seeing red. We no longer speak to one another, and I will forever refuse to speak to that woman. My husband stands by me on that decision. Till this day, when I think about my wedding I tear up. She ruined it and didn't even feel sorry for it. And those of you who say she fell and couldn't help it, after watching our wedding video her husband and the pastor were holding her arms. She deliberately stepped back and fell. They didn't ruin the wedding, but did ruin a couple pictures. An aunt and her family are notorious for showing up, eating all the food, stealing some drinks, and leaving. Her one son, nice guy that he is, has addiction problems and just can't keep it together. Her daughter is trashy and has a new boyfriend every week. She will show up to family events, make a gigantic plate of food, talk to no one, and leave. My family has a free vending machine in the man cave style basement and she will nearly empty before she leaves. So when my wife and I were planning the wedding, we didn't invite the one cousin with addiction problems because at that point, he was in rehab, and we didn't let the girl cousin have a +1 because we were making some guest list cuts and she has trashy boyfriends anyway. Well, you can guess who shows up at only the reception. Skip the wedding part. We had an open liquor and beer bar, so the addiction cousin gets blitzed immediately. He was jumping into every picture he could and becoming a real nuisance. My dad, no relation to this cousin, almost had to kick him out before other family members took him away. The girl showed up to our semi-formal wedding wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, and her boyfriend of the week, who had the worst tobacco smile and looked like your typical redneck, was wearing a camo shirt and ripped jeans. She was filling her plate multiple times. She's not fat, she just takes as much as she can and stores it for later, while her BF got drunk. Then they had an awful maquillage session in the middle of the dance floor while groping each other. I went to the bar to get a drink, and since I was the groom, people let me to the front. Her BF was there and was like, what the hell? Someone else said I was the groom, and he was like, yeah, the groom. No way, let's take shots. Everyone else that night was wonderful. It only takes a couple trashy family members to bring the mood down. I ruined a wedding one time, but it wasn't my fault. I swear it wasn't. I was a friend of the groom, and I had an F-150, so I got asked to bring some chairs and a table to the reception hall, as people who own trucks are often asked to do. I agreed and was told I would be met there by a couple of women and a few guys to unload everything and place it. Cool. One of the women was pretty hot. I flirted a bit, and she flirted back. She asked if I wanted to take a walk along the river that the reception hall was on. Sure. We walked for a while and talked, and it got hotter and hotter. We ended up making out on the riverbank for a bit and walking back to the hall, where I invited her to go for a ride in my truck. This was in rural Indiana, so in about 10 minutes we were along some numbered county road in the back of the truck, laying on a blanket and going at it. It was late evening and there was no one around. Then a car comes towards us. We laid still and waited on them to pass, but the car stopped and the girl from earlier got out and started screaming at us. Yep, the girl I was with was the bride. The wedding got cancelled. My friend punched me in the face. He found out later that I had no idea who she was and apologized. We are good now, and it was quite the scandal for a while. I used to volunteer at a hospital that had an attached venue they would rent out as a side business. I usually was in transport in the psych wing, but since they knew I was strong, I'd sometimes be requested to go and help down there carrying food, tables, and the like. This one wedding reception was good, except there were these two guests who were sisters of the bride. They were loud, obese, racist, rude, and were trying to talk politics with other people who totally didn't care. A few of the things were calling the saucier, second highest chef under the head chef, who was black eye the boy, monkey cook, or it the whole time he was helping set up. They went into a conversation while the groom was talking and making a speech. They were loud enough to be heard, but clearly unaware that if Romney doesn't win, then the whole country will go to the wetbacks. During the first dance, the song was Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You. It was really nice and everyone was quiet, even them. A few seconds after the song ended, the one said, I really like that song. Too bad she was a crap. That was loud enough to get a response from several guests, who told them to basically go freak themselves. Food time. The real food, not just the small stuff. The way the lines were set up were 3 long tables that ent into an L shape. The first 2 were identical, while the third had some specialty drinks and lead back to the main hall. As instructed by the couple, everyone got a small tray/plat and walked down either side. We were told to do 2 slices of meats, 2 scoops of sides, and so on. You could get as many different options as you wanted, but the limits on how many of each were in place. Example, you could get 2 slices of ham, 2 slices of beef, and 2 slices of fish, but you couldn't get 3 beef until everyone has had this. The ham planets arrived and immediately began arguing none of it was enough. The portions were so small, yada yada. They got everything. At the meat area they were arguing, and the cat had just said, I have to follow the rules set in place by the bride and the groom. I had a break, so I don't know what led to the next part, but for some reason they accidentally knocked over the ham. I came out because I heard screaming, and the one is on the floor crying and holding her hand. In accidentally sticking her hand under the tray to flip it, she learned just how hot a fire makes metal. She was screaming. The bride was in the other room and just looked so embarrassed. Eventually enough was enough and the bride, groom, and the bride's mother told them to leave. They got around the corner out of view of guests and the one smacked the bride. The groom in the speed of light in what I can only say is pure reflexes neurons don't process that fast punched her in the face full force sending her tumbling backwards. Security was called by the catering who escorted the two women out. 15 minutes later cops came as the sisters called the mask to speak to the groom, the chef, and the security. After a few minutes the cops let them all come back in. The next 2 hours went well, but we ran out of frozen grape juice ice cubes for the drinks table. Not a guest, but the photographer. Didn't really ruin the wedding, but she wasn't the greatest photographer in the world. She's a friend of a family member's and runs her own photo company. She gave us a good deal, and at rehearsal she had a lot of good ideas. Towards the end of rehearsal I pulled her aside and told her specifically one picture that I wanted. My wife had no idea that I'd picked out and got her wedding ring joined with her engagement ring. She was under the impression I picked up her engagement ring from getting polished and cleaned up for our day a few days before, and I gave it to my mom. In reality, I had the ring for weeks stashed away in my safe. It was gorgeous, and she was going to be so surprised. I wanted her reaction caught on camera. Well, the photographer said she would sneak up behind the officiant and grab that moment. Where was she when I was putting the ring on my wife? In the back of the hall furthest away from us as possible. I was irritated, but a family friend caught my wife's reaction kind of. I brushed it off. Next up was the after ceremony pictures. This lady had us standing on a hill. She was at the bottom, and people around her taking pics as well. No biggie, but as the professional photographer you need to make sure that people stay focused on your camera. Not the third aunt of my twice removed cousin's boyfriend's dad. That was irritating. Another thing, you know how there's supposed to be a whole bunch of just candid shots of people hanging out and having a good time. Yeah, we got maybe 50 of those. Where was the photographer? Oh, she was busy talking to the family member that she's a friend of. She put her freaking camera away. I was livid. I didn't show it. I didn't bring it to my wife's attention because I didn't want her to freak out. She was having a great time. So instead of really great pictures from a lady who runs her own company, we got mediocre pictures from her and way better pics from the cell phones and my sister's Canon DSLR that was floating around. I'm so glad we weren't the ones paying her. I would have snapped. I'm not sure if she ruined it, but it is a fun story. At my wedding, my best friend was our best man. His wife, now divorced, was a very hot, lush, drunkenly slutty mess. It had been this way for years. She promised him that she wouldn't drink during the wedding or reception. So about halfway through the reception, she is out there on the dance floor grinding on my 50-year-old 300-pound uncle just wasted and giving him tunge. Seems she had a flask hidden someplace. She then starts trying to make out with just about every guy she can find. My friend then collected his wife and had to leave. Now, on the way home she gets pissed and jumps from the car in motion and dashes down the street. She's a marathon runner, and my buddy lost her while turning around the car. She proceeds to go to a local bar and meet up with some women she knows from her work. They drink more, and she gets in an argument with a woman another she knows that was at the bar. That woman leaves after my friend's wife attempts to get her to fight her. So, my friend's wife in her work friend's car chase them home. She ends up trying to kick in the woman's home door and all drunk and crazy. This woman finally opens the door and beats the shit out of my friend's wife. Her work friends had to take her to the hospital, where my buddy finally got the call to go pick up his wife. It was my best pal's sister's wedding. I was asked to tend the open bar. No money to exchange hands, just serve drinks and keep an eye on the liquor. Halfway into the reception, folks were getting awfully drunk, probably because I was pouring them incredibly stiff drinks. Hooray for free alcohol. At some point, something got stirred up. I think was an ex-boyfriend vs groom kind of thing. I didn't know. I was tending the bar, but fists were thrown, then chairs, then bedlam. I did what I could to protect the liquor. Some older guy, who I had been feeding very stiff vodka drinks all night, came rambling over to my bar and asked for another. I poured. He shook his head as screams, fists, and food flew all around. Kids these days. I concurred and poured myself a stiff one. When the fighting settled down, the hall was a complete mess. The bride was in tears. Everything was destroyed. I decided the party was over. I left. It may have been an awful wedding for them, but it was a memorable one for me. No other wedding was as eventful. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.